This is happening for a reason. Why all of a sudden do we have people unable to study while black, unable to mow a lawn while black, unable to have a picnic while black, and being attacked? It's coming from the President of the United States. He's dog whistling every day.
Well, victim is now the highest honor that the American ruling class can bestow on a citizen. It's like the Victoria Cross was in the First World War. For 3 weeks, Jussie Smollett wore the victimhood mantle. Of course, it appears to be now a sham. Instead, Smollett was likely the one victimizing other people. If the press controlled things, he would have gotten away with it. But local police were skeptical from the very beginning, it looked like. They did the hard investigative work, and they apparently exposed a bizarre plot that nobody would have predicted at the outset. Mark Morgan was the head of the Border Patrol under President Obama. Before that, he spent more than 20 years at the FBI. He joins us tonight. Mr. Morgan, thanks very much for coming on. Underneath all of this is the larger story of Chicago, which has an epidemic of shootings and murders, 3,000 shootings last year. Fewer than 1 in 6 murders is solved in Chicago. And as I watched this thing play out over the past couple weeks, I kept thinking, what is the manpower that's being diverted from actual crimes to work on this fake crime?
So that's one of the most infuriating parts about this. So they have a shooting about every 2.5 hours and a homicide about every 12 hours. And so the detectives here in Chicago PD, even though they were skeptical from the start, they still took this serious, and they did an outstanding investigative job here. They devoted 12 or 15 senior detectives, experienced detectives around the clock to work on that. Do the math. They could have been doing other stuff, solving real crimes to help the city of Chicago. Instead, they're chasing this.
I mean, if this is what it appears to be, that seems like an actual crime. I can't remember. Well, we were just talking about Sharpton, who's got a show on another channel, richer and happier than ever, perpetuated the greatest race hoax in my lifetime and walks free. Do you think Smollett will face a similar bright future after this?
Well, I hope so. Like you said, Tucker, and I think you've been very fair and balanced, if the evidence does show where it's leaning, the district attorney should take this before the grand jury, get a true bill of indictment, which means he will be arrested. It's a class 4 felony, I believe, in Chicago. It's serious time. And then I hope the Chicago PD writes out a bill and makes him pay for their services.
Do you think it's possible that Andy Lack at NBC will hire him too to join Sharpton and kind of maybe a race hoax block?
So I hope
MSNBC. I couldn't resist.
A different time, but yeah.
The criminal penalties, though. I mean, it doesn't seem like anyone is ever charged. I can think of a long list off the top of my head of hate hoaxes in the past couple of years. I can't remember anyone doing time for it.
Well, what I will say, and this is what most investigators and detectives will tell you, that, falsifying claims, this isn't anything new. This happens on a regular basis. And I think that's why, from a law enforcement perspective, Tucker, we're so frustrated, because it's not just a rush of judgment to assume every allegation is fact. What you've seen is a step further. They're not just accepting every allegation as fact, but they're also immediately placing blame hours after it happened.
What happens to a society in which people's skin color makes them more believable or less believable? I thought that's what we were against. And yet I saw a lot of people, we played the clips earlier, saying this guy looks a certain way, therefore you must believe him. Isn't that what was wrong with the Jim Crow South, that people had that attitude?
Exactly right. I mean, let's be honest. We're already taking a country that is very divided on this issue.
Yes.
And when something like this happens, what happens? It just further divides us. And I hope, if the evidence shows, I hope the DA does the right thing and holds him accountable.
I mean, I wonder after a while if the pressure doesn't become so intense that justice is no longer blind. I mean, maybe justice is never blind, but we should be trying for that, I would hope. Have we given up trying?
I can tell you Chicago PD hasn't given up. They did the right thing, even though they were skeptical, right, from the start.
Right.
They still did everything they could. They took this hate crime, which they should, very serious. And the investigative work that they've done, I hope they're able to unpeel that and let the American people know just how difficult it was, what they've done. And they did the right thing. So, I think we're okay from a law enforcement perspective. They're still going to do the right thing. And I hope, Tucker, that the divide also, that the anti-law enforcement movement, I hope this serves that law enforcement. Nope, they're still going to do their job. No matter the vile things that are said about law enforcement, Chicago PD did exactly what they should do.
Seems that way. It just makes everyone hate each other. It's so sad. This stuff is. Mr. Morgan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Well, the press blasted Smollett's original allegation to the entire country, as they did with Covington, the fake Duke lacrosse rape, the fake rapes at UVA, and a lot of other stories that conveniently confirmed their own personal biases. They learned nothing from any of these hoaxes, which again, they help perpetuate. Instead, they prefer to forget they ever happened. Will this time be any different? Robby Soave is really the world's living expert on this question. He is associate editor at Reason.com, author of the book Panic Attack, Young Radicals in the Age of Trump, and he joins us today. Robby, when last you were on the commercial break, I said, since you really are, I think of as like an expert on hoaxes like this, I said, if we find out more about the Smollett case, I hope you'll come back, and you have. So my first question is, what about these stats that you often hear about hate crimes? I have them thrown at me all the time. 1 in 5 Americans will die in a hate crime or whatever. They seem very large, these numbers. Are they real?
The short answer is no. If you look very carefully, it's easy to misrepresent them. So there was an increase from 2016 to 2017 in the number of hate crimes. But if you look, that's actually just because more agencies reported data to the federal government.
Right.
So just counting the issue more accurately will make it look like the problem's getting worse, when really there were just fewer people participating in this scheme to count hate crimes the year before. Statistics about anti-Semitic hate incidents that the Anti-Defamation League has talked about. I looked at those. They said there was a 60% increase since Trump was elected. Actually, anti-Semitic violence was way down, and what was up was that one deranged teenager who actually lived in Israel had sent a bunch of bomb threats to Jewish institutions. So that was the entire swing, was just him doing that. I mean, these were small numbers of overall crime, so it's easy to change depending on how you count it and how you tally it. It looks like, it's happening and it's rising, and we can easily point to why that is, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
So what you have is interest groups feeding misleading statistics to the media, but in this specific case, the media don't push back or dig deep. So in other words, if Philip Morris says to me, Marlboros are actually good for your health, I might want to Google it myself. But when these groups when the Southern Poverty Law Center sends fake stats to New York Times, they don't check.
Right, and their stats weren't even scientific. They were just surveys of their own members, who of course are very intimately interested in promoting the idea that there's this surge in kind of hate crimes. And then the media institutions, when you read their stories, they just lead with the headline of this is the figure that the activist group says, and then maybe many paragraphs down, if you're lucky, you get oh, by the way, actually this is comparing apples to oranges because of some change in how the things.
You're one of the only people I know, which is why I love talking to you, in the media, maybe because you're not aligned on either side, who follows up on the hoaxes. No one else seems to. Are there stats kept on this?
It is so hard to tell what percentage of these kinds of things are hoaxes. I've been trying to figure this out for a long time. A lot of times, if we're talking about, for instance, the college bias incidents, where someone does something that maybe might not even be criminal, but it violates the college policy or something racially offensive. Oftentimes they're just not solved. When they are solved, it seems to me, from my looking into it, that a lot of the time it ends up being a hoax. That's just from which ones I see get solved. A lot of times we just have no idea. So I can't say.
But
I don't know.
Of the cases that have been solved, off the top of your head, what percentage would you say are fraudulent?
It could be as many as every other, probably.
Wow. Okay. So you're talking about a lot of lying. A lot of lying. No surprise there. Robby, great to see you. Congrats on the book.
Thank you.